Africa is one of the most religious continents on earth. Not culturally religious. Not, yeah, I believe in something religious. I'm talking pray before you leave the house, all-night kesha, tithe before rent religious. And where you have that level of faith, you also have something else, money. And where there's money, you'll always find a certain type of entrepreneur. Now, to be clear, not every pastor, not every church. We are not doing that lazy generalization thing. We are talking about the elite tier, the spiritual CEOs, the men who don't just preach the word, they monetize it. These are the guys who claim they can cure stage 4 cancer with what looks suspiciously like doom insect spray. The kind of men who say God told me with the same confidence you say Google Maps says.
After we created those planets, then I was holding to put them in their orbit and on their matrix. You can imagine how big their hand one can be.
The kind of leaders who somehow turn the Holy Spirit into what feels like a multi-billion shilling startup. Private jets, armored convoys, designer suits, funded by congregations that are one hospital bill away from a fundraiser poster. But here's the problem. When you build a ministry on theatrics, eventually the production quality starts slipping. The actors forget their lines. The crippled guy walks a little too normally. The resurrection takes a bit too long. And in 2026, everything is in 4K. Today, we are not just talking about belief. We are talking about the business of belief. We are diving into the moments where a man of God turns into suspect, where prophecy meets police report, from fake resurrections.
Elliot. Hello, Elliot. Elliot. Elliot.
Jesus.
Lift your hands. Lift your hands. You are Kalabasa. Barabasa Tabasa.
To what might be the first recorded case of Bluetooth healing. This is what happens when the anointing runs into evidence, and trust me, some of these clips, you can't rebuke HD footage. But before we dive into this abyss, if content like this is your type of thing, let me earn your subscription by the end of the video. I just want to take a moment to address something important with you guys. In 2 days, we have our next court date, and I genuinely want to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting the channel, sending messages, and standing by us through this entire situation. For those of you who might be new here, earlier in 2025, we uploaded a video titled The Rise and Fall of the Akasha Cartel. In that documentary, we explored the Akasha family's widely reported influence, and we discussed allegations that corruption and interference within the justice system may have played a role in their operations. One of the public figures mentioned in that video was former Chief Justice Philip Waki, who had faced misconduct allegations during his tenure, claims that were covered in public reports and media articles, all of which we referenced and will continue to link for transparency. It's also important to note that these matters were addressed through official processes, and he was later cleared by a tribunal. However, despite the careful framing of our reporting as allegations and public record, the video ultimately led to an ongoing defamation case. So yes, that's where we're currently at. Your continued support, whether it's through sharing, donating toward legal fees, or simply helping helping bring awareness genuinely means the world right now. To everyone who's been holding us down, thank you. To anyone who also wishes to support us in this time, you can use the till number on your screen. And with that being said, let's get into today's documentary. Chapter 1: The Lazarus Liability. Meet Alf Lukau, founder of Alleluia Ministries International, and in February 2019, he decided to attempt something that most pastors wisely leave to the afterlife: a live resurrection in a Santon parking lot. Now, we've seen some wild plot twists before, but this felt less like a miracle and more like a low-budget Nollywood pilot that accidentally went global. Here's how it starts. A hearse branded Kings and Queens, Real Funeral Services, pulls up to the church. Lukau steps out in a suit that probably cost more than your first car. He approaches a coffin. Inside is a man named Brighton Moyo, also referred to as Elliot. According to the official story, dead for 3 days, cold body, family in tears, the full Lazarus DLC package. Lukau shouts, "Rise up," and Elliot rises, but not dramatically, not supernaturally. He sits up with the stiffness of a guy who just realized he signed the wrong contract.
He's now alive. Jesus saved.
Crowd loses its mind. People scream, cameras shake. The clip hits Facebook, then Twitter, then every WhatsApp group with an auntie in it. Global, viral, instant headline. But here's the thing about the internet. It doesn't just clap anymore. It zooms in. Within hours, people started replaying the footage in 4K like it was a crime scene. And if you actually look, like really look, you can see Elliot's chest moving. You can see him swallow. For a man who'd allegedly been refrigerated for 72 hours, he was breathing with impressive enthusiasm. Then came the plot twist nobody asked for: the lunch break. Photos surfaced later that same day of the resurrected man casually sitting in the back office eating a plate of food. Apparently, coming back from the dead works up an appetite. But the real chaos, it didn't come from skeptics. It came from the funeral homes. Because this wasn't just a miracle gone wrong. This was branding fraud. Not one, not two, but 3 funeral parlors, including Kings and Queens, came out publicly saying, "We do not know this man." Kings and Queens even took legal action, claiming the church lied to hire their hearse, saying they had a dispute with another mortuary. And according to them, the coffin in the video, not even theirs. They alleged the church basically slapped their stickers onto a random casket like it was a sponsored post. At that point, it stopped being a church scandal and started feeling like a group project where nobody wanted their name attached anymore. The South African government launched an investigation. The church's story began evolving in real time. First, he was dead. Then, when the pressure turned up, suddenly he wasn't fully dead. He was already alive when he arrived. They just assisted, which is a wild downgrade from resurrection to spiritual jumpstart. But here's where the story stops being funny. 2 months later, in April 2019, Brighton Moyo actually died. For real this time. He passed away in Zimbabwe due to severe stomach complications. No cameras, no dramatic commands, no Lazarus moment. Just a quiet burial. The man who once went viral for cheating death couldn't escape it, and that's the uncomfortable irony. Elliot became a meme, the funeral homes got a legal nightmare, the headlines moved on, and Pastor Lukau, still preaching, still influential, still wealthy, because in the business of belief, even bad press is still publicity. Chapter 2, the major one, data breach. This is Shepherd Bushiri. To his followers, he is Major One. A prophet so powerful, he reportedly had access to diplomatic privileges. To South African authorities, he's a fugitive tied to a multi-million-dollar fraud and money laundering case. But to the internet, he's the man who tried to patch up date reality and forgot YouTube has a pause button. Back in 2015, Bushiri dropped what was supposed to be the ultimate flex, a video titled Prophet Bushiri Walking on Air. The concept? Simple. Descend the stairs, touch the last step, then levitate and listen. If you're watching that clip on a potato quality screen from 2009, it looks convincing, but in HD, it starts feeling like a group project where the cameraman didn't understand the assignment. Notice how the camera zooms in aggressively on his shoes, not his face, not a wide shot, just ankles. Why? Because once you widen the frame, the miracle starts developing extra limbs. Look closely at the floor, and you can spot shadows, the outline of two men positioned suspiciously close. In leaked, less polished versions of the clip, it becomes clearer. Bushiri isn't floating, he's being supported. It's less prophetic levitation and more security guards doing squats. But levitating wasn't even his most ambitious special effect. Bushiri's favorite gadget, an iPad. He claimed he could use it to take photos in the spirit. During services, he'd dramatically lift the device, and suddenly, an image of someone's house or private life would appear on the screen. The congregation saw divine revelation. Critics saw Wi-Fi. Reports later suggested a classic technique known as hot reading. Congregants would fill out detailed forms upon entering. Names, addresses, ID numbers. An internal team could easily cross-reference that information with social media, Facebook, Instagram, grab photos of houses, cars, family dinners, upload them to a shared folder. All Bushiri had to do, swipe. He wasn't accessing heaven's database. He was scrolling through what looked suspiciously like a curated camera roll. And for a while, the formula worked. The church grew. The influence expanded. The brand, because let's call it what it was, scaled internationally. Until the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, better known as the Hawks, started looking into the books. In 2020, Bushiri and his wife were arrested over allegations involving roughly $6 million tied to fraud and money laundering. They were granted bail, and then things got cinematic. Despite court conditions, Bushiri left South Africa and resurfaced in Malawi, claiming he fled due to safety concerns. Authorities, however, viewed it as a direct violation of bail terms, from walking on air to walking across borders. Today, extradition battles continue to make headlines. Major One still has followers, still holds services, still commands influence, but the contrast is hard to ignore. If you can allegedly see into the spiritual realm, you'd think you'd see a police raid coming. Chapter 3, the Prophet of Doom. If you thought spiritual iPad was peak innovation, buckle up. This is Lethebo Rabalago. In Limpopo, he earned the nickname the Prophet of Doom, and not in a metaphorical Book of Revelation kind of way. In 2016, images started circulating online that genuinely looked like deleted scenes from a psychological thriller. During a service at his church, Mount Zion General Assembly, Rabalago was filmed walking up to congregants and spraying them in the face with doom. Yes, doom, the same industrial strength insecticide designed to eliminate cockroaches, eyes, mouth, skin, direct heat. His explanation: the spray had become a divine vehicle for the Holy Spirit, According to him, it could cure cancer, HIV, demonic possession. If you had a problem, he treated it like a household pest infestation. But here's where reality kicks the door down. Flip the can around and look at the ingredients. Pyrethroids. According to literally every medical authority worth listening to, spraying that into someone's face can cause chemical burns, respiratory distress, and in some cases, blindness. The label doesn't say miracle in a can, it says hazardous toxin. When journalists confronted him, Rabalago didn't back down. He doubled down. He argued that because he had anointed the product, its chemical properties were spiritually transformed. He famously said, "Everything on earth belongs to God, even doom belongs to God," which is bold theology. But here's the problem with that argument. Chemistry does not care about your sermon. The backlash got so intense that Tiger Brands, the actual manufacturer of doom, had to publicly distance themselves. They essentially issued a corporate version of, "Please stop putting our insecticide in people's eyes." That's when you know the situation has left the group chat and entered crisis mode. But it didn't end with bad PR. In 2018, a South African court found Rabalago guilty on multiple counts of assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, along with violating agricultural remedy laws. The judge was not convinced by the divine chemistry defense. He received a fine and a suspended prison sentence. And that's what makes this case so unsettling. Because this wasn't metaphorical harm, it wasn't symbolic manipulation, it was physical. This is what happens when spectacle replaces sense, when viral moments become more important than human safety. Faith didn't just get stretched here, it got weaponized. Chapter 4, The Heavenly Hotline. If you've ever felt like your prayers were bouncing off voicemail, don't worry. Pastor Paul Sanyangore had a solution. He didn't just pray to God, he called him. In 2017, a clip from his church, Victory World International Ministries, exploded online. Mid-service, Sanyangore pulls out a smartphone, dials a number, and casually opens with, "Hello, is this heaven?" No hesitation, no buffering, straight to the cloud. He then proceeds to have a full back-and-forth conversation with Papa God, asking for live updates about a woman kneeling in front of him, her children, her health, her exact location in Bulawayo.
Hello? Yes, Father. Is this heaven? Yes, Father. Is it heaven? Yes, Father. I have a woman here. Yes. What do you have to say about her? Oh, I should ask her, who is Sibo? Sibo. Who is Sibo? Okay.
The crowd losing their minds. At one point, he shouts, "Heaven is online," and for a moment, it genuinely felt like divine customer service had launched a beta version. But let's talk about the back-end infrastructure of this so-called miracle. When local journalists asked how exactly he obtained Heaven's contact details, Sanyangore claimed he received the number during prayer. A voice told him to call direct. He even hinted that he might share the number publicly. Imagine a prayer hotline going viral, but then the signal dropped because the real plot twist didn't come from skeptics. It came from inside the family. A relative eventually spoke out, explaining that God wasn't seated on a golden throne taking calls. He was allegedly in a back room with another phone. According to the explanation that circulated, staff members would collect detailed information from congregants through forms, conversations in the lobby, casual, small talk. That information would then be relayed to someone backstage who would call the pastor's miracle line during the service. So instead of a divine download, it was a conference call, not prophecy, logistics. And once that narrative hit the internet, the illusion cracked fast. Because here's the thing about claiming you have God's personal cell number. You cannot afford poor network coverage. After the stunt was widely questioned and dissected, Sanyangore's reputation took a serious hit. The viral moment that once boosted his profile became the very clip people replayed to debunk him. He tried to brush it off, suggesting critics were simply jealous of his connection. But once people realize the hotline to heaven runs on a prepaid SIM, the offering basket starts feeling optional. Chapter 5. The Bluetooth Body Double. If you're running a long-term illusion, there's one basic rule. Don't reuse the same actor in 5 different sequels. But in the world of high production, prophetic theater, apparently casting calls are limited. Meet Anyaba Elizabeth. In 2019, she went viral for what looked like a textbook miracle. In one clip, a pastor prays over her visibly withered arm, and right there on stage, it appears to grow back to normal length. The crowd erupts. Medical science is shaking. Then, a week later, another video surfaces. Different church, different pastor. Same woman, same arm, same dramatic expansion. One of the pastors linked to the viral clips was Chris Okafor. Another was Becky Enenche. And as more footage emerged, people realized this wasn't a one-time divine intervention. It was a tour. By the 5th video, the internet did what it always does. It started cross-referencing thumbnails like detectives on caffeine. Elizabeth wasn't switching churches for spiritual growth. She was repeating the exact same miracle formula. So what was actually happening? Investigations later suggested that Elizabeth reportedly lives with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a connective tissue disorder that, in certain cases, allows unusual joint flexibility. According to reports, she could voluntarily dislocate her shoulder and manipulate the appearance of her arm. Translation: she'd walk into a service with her shoulder dislocated and her arm tucked in a way that made it appear shortened. The pastor would pray, she'd pop it back into place. Instant growth, instant testimony, instant viral clip. No supernatural regeneration required, just anatomy. But here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Elizabeth later claimed she wasn't just randomly attending services. She said she was being coordinated through intermediaries, essentially agents, who connected her with churches looking for a high-impact miracle moment. Think about that. The same pastors who claimed to possess supernatural discernment allegedly couldn't discern that the woman in front of them had already been healed by someone else 6 days earlier. Elizabeth reportedly earned around 1 million naira per appearance, roughly a few $1,000s at the time. Miracles apparently had a booking fee. Once the story gained traction, she disappeared from the spotlight. And suddenly, multiple pastors were left explaining why their once-in-a-lifetime miracle looked suspiciously like a rerun. Because when the same arm grows back 5 times in 1 month, it stops being divine intervention. It starts looking like a franchise. Chapter 6. The Holy Water Cartel. Now we've reached the heavyweight division. Before his death in 2021, TB Joshua, according to Joshua's claims, it could cure cancer, HIV, infertility, financial hardship, even deadly outbreaks. You didn't just buy water, you bought hope in plastic form. For years, the brand held. Then, in 2024, the BBC documentary. In 2014, a guest house building within the church compound collapsed, killing 116 people, most of them visitors from South Africa. It was one of the deadliest church-related tragedies in modern African history. Investigations and inquests later raised serious questions about building standards and accountability. The incident became a legal and diplomatic issue between Nigeria and South Africa. For many critics, that was the moment the image cracked. And then came the testimonies. In the BBC investigation, former disciples alleged years of intense control, sleep deprivation, isolation, psychological manipulation, and abuse. Some claimed they were told that leaving the ministry would result in divine punishment or death. That's no longer just questionable theology, that's coercion. Here's what makes this story complicated. Joshua was never convicted of these allegations. He died in 2021, still revered by millions across the globe. To many, he remains a man of faith who healed the sick and gave them dignity. But as more former insiders began speaking publicly, a different portrait emerged. One that painted SCOAN less as a church and more as a closed system built around one central figure. This